Hi guys, in this video I will try and explain the difference between all four lenses we have here, the pros and cons for each and which scenario is best for which, both in shooting stills as well as videos. First of all, I am not paid to make this video. I paid with my own money to buy all of these lenses to make the comparisons and mini guide. So that's that out of the way. Let's get into the video. Okay, let's start with how much it costs for all of these lenses. We are going to base all of these lenses in UK pound sterling for now, but of course different countries will have different prices. First, we have the Sony 85mm 1.4 GM right here. This one is retail at RRP 1889 from the Sony official website. If you were to buy used, you can probably get them for around 1000 to 1100 area. And second, we have the Samyang 85mm 1.4 FE right here. This one is retail RRP at £599 from Wex. For use, of course, you're gonna get them for a lot cheaper now, for around £450, £500 area. Thirdly, we have the ZEISS Batis 1.8, and this one goes for around £1075 from the ZEISS official website right now. But if you were to buy used, this lens will probably go for around £650, £700 area now. And last but not least, we have the 85mm Sony 1.8 FE lens right here. This one costs around £600 new from the Sony official website. For use, you can get them for probably around £400 to £450 right now, maybe a little bit cheaper. Okay, now of course there are a couple more 85mm third-party lenses out there available as well, such as the Sigma 85mm 1.4 art lens and other third-party manual lenses available in the market. Some of them you will probably find them a lot cheaper than what you find with all these lenses here, so just bear that in mind when you shopping for these lenses. Now let's talk about the size here. So here we have the lens side by side next to each other. The measurement will be shown on screen. In case if you can't keep up, just pause the video to digest, or you can just go to Sony official website or Samyang or ZEISS official website to check out the measurements on there. All of the lenses are measurements without lens hood, as you can see right here. So we're gonna go ahead and do the first one. So first up, we start with the Sony 85mm GM. The weight of this lens is 820 grams and the measurement is over here, with a filter diameter of 77mm. Secondly, we have the Samyang 85mm 1.4. This lens weighed at 568 grams and the measurement will be shown here, with a filter diameter of 77mm. And thirdly, we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. The weight of this lens is 452 grams and the measurement is right here, with a filter diameter of 67mm. And finally, we have the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE lens. This lens weighing at 371 grams and the measurement is shown right here, with the filter diameter of 67mm. As you can see, the Sony 85mm GM 1.4 weighed the heaviest, and the Samyang 85mm 1.4 is actually surprisingly light, and as expected, the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE is the lightest and smallest of them all, with the ZEISS Batis placing just in between them all. Now, all of the difference of weight and sizes shouldn't make any difference when it comes to shooting stills photography, but when it comes to balancing on the gimbal shooting video, the size and weight does matter. Now we are going to look more into depth into how well each of the lenses with my Sony body balance on my newly bought Zhiyun Rebuild S right here later on. But for now, let's move on to our next topic, which is the physical appearance and the handling of the lenses. So first, we have the Sony A7R 1.4 GM right here, attaching to the Sony A7R III. The feel and the handling of the lens is nice and grippy. It has the rubber around this aperture ring control, and with a click and declick button right here for the video shooters. If you have the declick on, it will become clickable, and if you take it off, it will be nice and smooth without sound when you're turning. It also has the customized autofocus hold button right here for shooting portrait and framing subject if you want to shoot different area. And it also has the autofocus and manual focus button right here. Now, I have shot this lens since I switched to Sony A7R II from my Canon 7D Mark II, and ever since then I had just loved how well it fits onto my hand and how nicely it feels. However, it is a heavy lens, and when you're holding and going out for a shoot for a long period of time, your hand does get tired sometimes, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so now we have the Samyang 85mm 1.4 with my Sony A7R III. Straight away I can tell that the weight is already so light compared to the Sony G-Master lens right here, and I've had this lens for 2 months now, almost 2 months now. I must say that the handling of the lens is quite satisfying. It has that shiny surface, and it feels really smooth and shiny, and I just like the feel of it. And however, it doesn't have any buttons on it like the autofocus and manual focus button, or the declick or click and declick button for video shooters, and also the custom hold button. That can be tricky when you're trying to change between autofocus and manual focus. You have to go through all these buttons you have on your body, Sony bodies right here, to find the right button for you. That's the only downside. Next up, we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. The build quality is really nice, I have to say. As you would expect it, this is a lens that produced by the ZEISS themselves. The handling is also super good. It's nice and small. It doesn't protrude outwards like the Samyang does. It's just sort of like just rounded nicely to the front, and so handling of it is quite nice. Now, it also has the LED on the front right here. If I turn it off and turn it on again, you can see it right here. And it has the LED screen. It has the aperture ring the details and the information you need to know on it, and it also have a rubberized manual and autofocus control ring right here. Which one thing can be bad is that it will gather a lot of dust on it. As you can see already, it's gathered quite a bit of dust because it's rubber. It's gonna, any dust you have, it's gonna stick on it. It does feel really premium on the hand, and the material used on the ZEISS lens is just so premium. And of course, it doesn't have any autofocus and manual focus buttons on it, and same as it doesn't have the focus hold, customized focus hold buttons on it as well. So for when you trying to figure out the autofocus and manual focus and changing between autofocus and manual focus, that's gonna be tricky for the newbie if you want to work that one out. Finally, we have the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE lens right here. This is the lightest lens of them all compared to what we have currently right here, and the build quality is okay. The body is made out of plastic. However, despite that it's made out of plastic, it does still have that kind of like premium to, in between premium to good quality feel, if you like, know what I mean. And it's good to hold also if you don't have a big hand. There are also autofocus and manual focus button right here. It also has the custom hold buttons, just like the G-Master right here. So after using and holding them in the past, I can safely say that the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE lens right here feels the best for me in terms of holding and handling of the lens and how small it is. but it also still has all the essential buttons right here, the autofocus and manual focus switch, the focus ring control, and the custom hold button. Now, of course, this is all down to personal preferences and how you feel and what you need for your shoot. Different people will have different needs, and some people will prefer the lighter options, and some people will prefer the heavier option but with a better quality. So now we will talk about the balancing of the 85mm lenses with my Sony A7R III on my gimbal right here. The gimbal choice of mine today will be the Webuild S. The reason why I choose this gimbal is because the Webuild S is smaller and lighter to carry around with you, so it works well with the travel videographers or photographers who also uses a gimbal to travel around with them. So let's go ahead and get the camera and lenses balanced on the Webuild S, and then I will show you some sample footage of each lenses when I move forward and backwards and moving left to right, side by side, that kind of sort of movement, and we will see how good this footage are on the Webuild S. The purpose of this test is to see how the weight of the lenses impact and play a part in making the footage shaky or not shaky. So we will go on from there, and I will be starting the time-lapse video of all the lenses right here that I will be balancing on the Webuild S with my Sony A7R III, and we'll see how well they balance and if I'm even able to balance them, especially the 85mm GM lens, and then we'll go into the footage. Enjoy. So here we have the 85mm 1.8 FE lenses successfully balanced on the Webuild S, and it seems to move really smooth, and later on we will try and get some footage of it. Let's go on and balance the next one. We have the ZEISS Batis 85mm balancing successfully on the A7R III. This one has no problem as well alongside the 85mm FE because they're nice and small lightweight lens, so it's no problem balancing them. Next, we're going to move on to the Samyang 85mm FE 1.4. Okay, so now we have the next lens right here successfully balanced, the Samyang 85mm 1.4 with the Sony A7R III. This one will be heavier than the rest of the two, but it seems to still balance quite well. So on to our last but not least, the GM lens. Okay, so now we have the 85mm GM 1.4 also successfully balanced on the Webuild S. As you can see, the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE and the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8 has no problem whatsoever balancing on the Webuild S itself. But I must say that the Webuild S does have a very strong motor compared to any other lightweight gimbal that's currently available out there in the market. For example, the Ronin SC, the payload for the Ronin SC will be a lot less compared to the Webuild S. So that means then if you were to balance to the Samyang 85mm 1.4 and the 85mm 1.4 GM on the gimbal, like say the Ronin SC or any other lighter gimbals, then you're going to probably struggle a little bit if you don't have the counterweight plate. You're going to need those counterweight adapter and a counterweight plate for it. So that's the only problem we have with the 85mm. So we're going to go ahead and show you some more footage of all the 85mm that balance on the gimbal shooting in the place that we're going to be next. And you can tell me, and then you can tell me and let me know on the comment which lenses perform the best in terms of how shaky and jittery it is. I won't be putting any stabilized wrap stabilization on it, and I'm just gonna shoot as it is. So you're just gonna tell me which one you think is better. I'm gonna try and repeat all the movement exactly the same, and I'm gonna try and be as still as possible and as fair as possible in terms of this comparison. So let me know in the comment below. We're back here in the studio now, reviewing all the footage that we have captured for this video right here, the 85mm lenses comparison. And the things that we're going to be looking at right now is the performance of the lenses on top of the gimbal with my Sony A7R III, and then we're going to go through each and every single one of them, and we're going to do a quick review, or live review if you like. So let's start off with the first one right here. We have the 85mm 1.4 and the Vivo S. Walking forward, so far it's quite okay. It's moving up and down a little bit, and then moving upwards because, you know, the lens is quite heavy. However, overall it seems to be moving quite smoothly, and walking backwards right now can be quite tricky. However, it seems to be doing the job quite well in terms of stabilizing the whole body and the lens. Of course, I was walking on a flatland surface. If I was walking on an uneven surface, it could be different. And then now we are going to go into the sideways walking, and you can see that the camera movement just slightly jerks a little bit to the right and left, and then right again. But generally speaking, normally it's okay for me. Now we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. It seems to be balancing well again, like I said before, with the 85mm 1.4. Doesn't seem to be moving as much as the 85mm 1.4. However, you can still see that little bit of movement going up and down. Walking backwards now seems to be fine as well. Bear in mind, I was walking quite slowly as well, so that's also a good thing sometimes. But if you want to do something of a fast movement, then it can be a bit more different. Fast-paced running and that kind of movement will be tricky. Seems to be okay. Moving sideways again, there is that little bit of a tiny jerk left and right in the camera movement. I think it probably just to do with I need to set the sensitivity. Now we have the Samyang 85mm 1.4 FE. This lens right here seems to be again doing okay. Not too much unwanted movement. There is a little bit of tiny up and down, uneven. As you can see, the lens is quite heavy, front heavy usually. Now we got a bit of sideways movement on over here, walking backwards. Still doing it a little bit. It's sometimes drifting around a little bit, but generally speaking, it's okay. And of course, you got the people walking in front of the shot right now. Right now, we are doing the sideways movement. Right now you can see that it's doing that sideways jerk movement again, left to right, and then it loses a bit of focus right here. That's to do with the Samyang lens. And next one we have the Sony A7R 1.8. This is the lightest lens of them all, so it should be able to do the job properly. Seems to be balancing okay so far. It's doing a little bit of sideways movement just like the others, but so far it's so good. Now walking backwards, it's going kind of drift a little bit, to be honest. So maybe it's to do with the lens being too light, the setup being too light to the point where it kind of doesn't know how to balance itself. But overall it's okay though. And sideways movement, it's actually seems to be about the same, to be honest, but less of the jerky left-right movement. So as you can see from the comparisons, the results between all of the different lenses are quite similar. There aren't really a set pattern on how well each lenses perform, But what I would say is that the 85mm GM 1.4 and the Samyang 85mm 1.4 just about managed to balance on the Rebuild S. So as a result, you do get a slightly jerky and shaky movement on the footage occasionally. And the ZEISS Batis 85mm and the 85mm 1.8 FE, on the other hand, are lighter. So hence, it does provide a more consistently smoother movement. So if you want to balance your 85mm lenses on a gimbal, make sure that you get a gimbal that have a heavy payload and can handle 85mm lenses. And as most of the 85mm lenses are usually quite heavy and big, so that's the reason why. So you will have a difficult time of getting a smooth footage. So the next thing we'll be looking at is the image comparisons between all four lenses that we've been testing out so far. The three key things I'll be looking at is the color contrast, sharpness, and the color fringing of the image. Now, first thing first, we will look at the sharpness of the image. After reviewing all the image that we have over here, all four of these, the first one is the G-Master, the second one is the ZEISS Batis, and the third one is the Samyang 85 1.8, and the last one is the 85 1.8 FE by Sony. After looking all of these, I can tell you that the ZEISS Batis 1.8 definitely have the sharpest image out of them all. As you can see right here, the eyes and the nose area and the mouth area is just incredibly sharp after you pixel peep and punch in at the maximum distance. From looking at them, I would also say that the 85 1.8 is the second sharpest of them all. Right here, you can see the eyes to eyes. You can just see that the ZEISS Batis just completely destroy. I won't say completely destroy, but it just beat the hell out of the 85 1.8. Now, in terms of compared to the Samyang 85 1.4 and the G-Master, the ZEISS Batis again definitely destroy the other two. This is the Samyang 85 1.4. This one is the Sony G-Master 1.4, and this one is the ZEISS Batis 85 1.8. Now you can clearly see the huge difference between them all right here. So the next thing we'll be looking at is the color contrast of the image. Now, in terms of color contrast, again, I would say that the ZEISS Batis is the cleanest of them all. You can see the skin tone is just impeccably smooth, and the color contrast is just so nice. And the next one, I would say the Samyang does have a slightly more yellowish tone, which makes the skin tone nicer. The third one for me will have to be the Sony 85mm 1.8. However, this one does give you a slightly more purpley tones than the other two so far. The last one for me is the G-Master itself. The G-Master definitely shows a more flatter color compared to the other three. However, I think that in different situations it will provide different results. Because I've used this lens for a while, and I know that this lens is quite contrasty when it comes to shooting at nighttime. So the next things that we'll be looking at is the color fringing. So what color fringing is the when you compare the two between the bright area and the dark tone, and you get the blue color fringe that kind of looks pretty fuzzy between the white and blue dark area, bright and dark area, and this right here is color fringing. As you can see already, the G-Master lens right here, it has got some color fringing already. Going on to the next one is the ZEISS Batis. You can see that it doesn't have any color fringing, or even not so much color fringing. Most of the lens will have some form of color fringing in them. However, for me, it seems that the ZEISS Batis 85 1.8 doesn't have that bad of a color fringing. The next one is the Samyang, and the Samyang seems to control the color fringing quite well. However, the image is softer compared to the other 2 or 3 lenses here. It's probably comparable to the Sony G-Master 1.4, but the color fringing is definitely not as bad as the other 3, I would say. For me, the worst one of the color fringing is definitely the Sony 85 1.8. As you can see, the color fringing over here is very bad, let's just say. It's almost, I would probably say it's worse than the G-Master. However, it does have a sharper image than the G-Master series. So overall, all in all, I would say that the ZEISS Batis 85 1.8 is definitely, for me, the best lens of them all over here. In this situation, in this environment, the ZEISS Batis 85 1.8 definitely performed the best for me. The second one I would have to say is closely fought between the Samyang 85 1.4 and the Sony 85 1.8. The Sony 85 1.8 is slightly, the color contrast is less contrasty compared to the others. However, the G-Master is definitely performed the worst in terms of contrast, sharpness, and color. In terms of color fringing, actually color fringing will be the third worst of them all. So that's my conclusion of the image comparisons between all 4 lenses right here. Next up, we are going to do a little bit of autofocus speed test with all the lenses right here that we have. We're going to be using our Sony A7R III, and we're going to be having our Atomos Ninja V right here to record anything that's happening on screen and see what happened and the speed of it, autofocus. So let's go and enjoy. Let's go and have fun. And I want to tell you the two pros and the two cons of these lenses after having some time of using it. The Sony 85mm GM 1.4. Two pros. The first one are the low light capability and the ability to maintain high quality images and sharpness despite the 1.4 shallow depth of field. And secondly is the bokeh. Two main reasons why I had kept this lens up until now, and none of these lenses so far are beating it. That's one of my opinion. The cons are obviously the weight of the lens. Now this lens is heavier compared to the rest of the options right here we have, and also the price of the lens, it's the most expensive out of them all. Not ideal if you don't have a big budget. Now we're going to get into the Samyang 85mm 1.4. Now the two pros are of course the f1.4 aperture and also the price that you paid for a 1.4 lens. For a 1.4 lens to be around the region of £550, it's quite a bargain when you think about it. And when you compare with the 85mm 1.4 GM, and of course the bokeh you get from it are pretty much comparable versus the 85mm GM. Now the two cons are of course the lack of AF and manual focus and focus hold button that you will get from the Sony 85mm GM. When it comes to focusing and switching between autofocus and manual focus, it's gonna be quite tricky for the beginners to navigate through the Sony system menu. As everyone would have known by now, the Sony menu system is absolutely crap. Of course, the image quality isn't the best compared to the G-Master, but it's good enough for what you pay for. You will see some fuzziness occasionally on the image, however the GM is just nice and sharp. However, if the lighting condition is good and everything else is spot on, then images are pretty much comparable. Next up, we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. Now, two pros for this lens are the build quality and the LED display you can find on the lens. The build quality on this lens is second to none. It feels very premium and it's what you expect for what you get from the ZEISS. Okay, next up we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. The two pros for this lens are the build quality and the LED display panel you get from the lens. The build quality on this lens is really second to none, and it feels so premium and so smooth that you just expect it from a lens that's produced by ZEISS company. The LED display on the lens is interesting. Not that I use them all the time, however I'm sure that some people will find it useful. The two cons for the ZEISS Batis is that this lens will be a bit more expensive compared to the 85mm 1.8 FE lens, and of course it also doesn't have any focus hold button on the body just like the Samyang 85mm 1.4. So when it comes to changing between autofocus and manual focus, you have to go through and navigate through the Sony menu system to try and change it and fiddling around with it. Of course, if you know how to do the shortcut key buttons on the menu system, then you can set it into customized button and you can just straight away press one button and then it will become autofocus and manual focus. But of course for the beginners will be a bit more tricky. They have to take a little bit time to get used to, and without those AF and manual focus button, it's going to be tricky for them to changing between them. Not that they need it, but some of them may want to use manual focus, so that's one of the cons. Finally, we had the Sony 85mm 1.8 FE. Now the two pros are the fact that this lens is the cheapest of them all compared to all the options we have right here, and the quality of the image is still comparable compared to the GM, the Samyang and the ZEISS Batis. And at 1.8, this lens provides some very sharp image, and so it's definitely one of the lenses that will be very popular amongst the portrait shooters. Okay, the two cons for the lenses is the fact that this lens is very plasticky and it feels very cheap in a way that it feels like if you drop on the floor or took a bang on it, it would definitely leave a huge dent on it. But it is so cheap that compared to the other lens that you just can't say no to it. And Another cons is that it's only 1.8, so that you won't actually get that extra light that you will get from the 1.4, say for example the GM or the Samyang. So in terms of letting lights in and getting that perfect bokeh, if you like, then Sony 85mm 1.8 will probably lose out compared to the GM and the Samyang. Okay, on to the most important question of them all right now. Which of these lenses is for you? 85mm 1.4 GM, go for this lens if the highest quality of images with quality bokeh are the absolute most important thing in what you're looking for, and if you don't mind spending over £1,000 for a lens as well. Samyang 85mm 1.4. Go for this lens if you are on a slight budget but you still want to get that 1.4 aperture in, and if you're shooting in low light condition a lot of times. And finally, also if you want to balance that 1.4 aperture lens on a gimbal, because this lens will be doing a better job compared to the 85mm 1.4 GM. Next one, we have the ZEISS Batis 85mm 1.8. Go for this lens if you are happy with the 1.8 but doesn't want to spend crazy amount of money for the 1.4 GM, but you also want the lens that looks the part and still perform well and feels really premium. And of course, if you want that LED display on the front, which I don't think most people will need it. Now, Sony 85mm 1.8, go for this lens if you are on a slight budget but don't really mind about the tiny difference in bokeh ball shape between the GM, Samyang 85mm FE and Sony 85mm 1.8 FE is the one for you, because this lens will produce some amazing sharpness compared to the other lenses. It's still comparable and the bokeh ball is not the worst. It does have that little bit of Kadai bokeh, but compared to the others, it is not too bad. So if you're on a slight budget and you can't be spending too much on Samyang or ZEISS Batis or the GM, then this lens will be for you, because this lens is nice and small and cheap and will do the job that you need. And of course, to be balancing on the gimbal, this lens will be perfect for it. There you have it, guys. I hope I have covered most of the points right here about the lenses that you need to know, and I hope that you have found this guide useful for you. If so, let me know in the comment section down below which of these lenses are for you and which lens have you owned in the past or are you planning to get. And of course, hit that like button if you like what you see, and subscribe if you haven't yet already. And until then, I shall see you next time. See ya.